Welcome back to Gary Grigsby's War in the East, Soviet Turn 3. And a hell of a turn it was. The Axis got their ground troops, got their infantry caught up, and launched massive attacks in basically every sector. We lost more men than even on the first turn of Barbarossa. On the first week of Barbarossa, we lost more this week. Some of that is reduction of our pocketed forces, but some of that is simply the Axis offensive kicking into gear again. We lost 300,000 men, or more than 300,000 men, almost 6,000 guns, over 1,000 tanks, and 700 airplanes somehow. The Axis has lost tanks on map, so it wasn't free. They did have to spend a lot of their tanks to do it, but it was bad, and they have basically pushed in our defenses in every sector. We got a few blurbs, historical blurbs this turn. The RAF raided Germany, dealing some manpower damage to them, which is great. And the Axis apparently just does not have enough troops in its northern front or in North Africa. So that's good for us. They're also pulling troops to the main front, which makes sense, but they're losing in their other fronts. And the northern front doesn't really matter so much, but the campaign in North Africa might actually hurt them in the long run, so that's good. And then we have a short historical blurb of us retreating, us evacuating civilians, factories, tractors, and more importantly, lots of cows. No, just kidding. The people are the most important. From the Ukraine to across the Urals in the east. And I think given our defenses, we'll be able to get more guys out of here than was historical if the game models that. I'm a little fuzzy on those rules. This turn, the Axis attacked us in every one of our strongly held defensive lines and got victories in every one of them. They also did a lot of cleanup work. That's where a lot of casualties are going to come from. Getting troops previously pocketed to surrender, basically eliminating the northwest pocket, more or less. And then they unfortunately attack and took Pskov. They had enough troops with these panzer divisions up here to push us off the defensive line in Pskov in a fairly bad defeat, and basically pushed us off the rest of the river line as well. So we're going to have to figure something out for this front and probably bring in more reinforcements up here, so that's not good. Around Poltavsk, they pushed us off of Poltavsk, which we were expecting, but pushed us basically off this Dvina River line, which, again, we were expecting, and we're just going to have to keep defending in rough terrain, but it's not a good thing. Around in the middle, in addition to reducing units, they also pushed through some of this swampy area near the Dnieper. This is actually fine because we still have the Pruitt line is intact, and we are actually making the Dnieper line behind it. And so the Smolensk area, even though they push forward, it's not a huge deal, but in the broader context, it's just another German advance. Here in the south is one of the worst combats for us. Not only did they push a lot of units off, causing us a lot of casualties. Look at that. That ain't no good. I don't know how that happened, but and pushed us off of Tarnopol, but they just shoved this entire line out of the way. They attacked all along the frontage, and won everywhere. Now, we did get more retreats than we got routes, I think. So that's good, but we did not hold this, and we're going to have to withdraw our remaining units from Podladia, whatever, and try to put together a defensive line in basically clear terrain, which is not good. We do have some hills here that we'll probably use as an anchor with our mountain divisions, but it definitely means that this area that we were trying to defend is no longer tenable. We will have to pull back. Hopefully we can stop them before they reach Dniester. Again, they'll eventually probably take it, but we'll try to throw together a line another couple of times. In the south, also, they made a lot of attacks across the Dniester, some of which we held off, but they did actually throw us off and get troops across, which is probably going to be the death knell for this river line. We may hold on to some or all of it for another turn or two just to force them to push us off, but we can't hold it for significantly longer because we may run into a situation where we could start getting encircled, and we definitely want to be able to set up secondary lines further back. So all in all, a pretty rough turn for us, but that is typical Soviet early war problems. So we're just going to have to fucking handle it. On to the air phase. This Baltic Fleet Command, get that shit out of here, can stay on retreat. I don't know why they went forward. Northwestern Command can go to flexible. Jesus Christ, what is this mess? Oh, this is just a mess. What is this? What is this? I'm gonna switch most of these guys to flexible because, oh god. As much of a mess as the AI has made out of it, they are not really in range where they're going to be imminently overrun. So, except the Southern Air Command, they need to fucking leave. Hey, what the fuck? Put it on flexible for one turn. Maybe it's not such a great idea. Anyway, there's that. It's raining in the Baltic. The Baltic line will pull back, but I am fairly happy with this. We are able to get most things out of here, and the things that we have left behind, they've had to allocate several divisions worth, or chosen to allocate several divisions worth to the cleanup effort. So that's nothing but excellent. But we're just going to keep on moving things out by ship and moving things into this port. The things we already have on ship will get off. Anything over here, we're just going to pull back by ship or by rail. Continue fortifying Tallinn. Continue defending on Saaremaa and Hiiumaa. Our Baltic evacuation going great. We were able to get most everything out, including all these HQ units, except we have an armored unit that cannot fit on the boats right now. If it survives another turn, we might be able to get it out, and that would be amazing. That would mean this Baltic pocket was fully evacuated, which is just grand, but we'll see if that's the case. We have some units that are just waiting on ships in different ports, getting out to Tallinn, which is itself soon going to be surrounded, so that's not like really great. But we might be able to march or move by train the troops out of here before they get fully surrounded. It is raining up here. That's going to hamper the Germans' movements a little bit, so that's good. Again, these brigades, we're probably going to use one of these HQ units to link them together to make this defense make sense and assign it to the Leningrad front later. But these just like regiments are going to stay up here. Again, they're not really strong units. We could get them out, but we're going to make the Germans actually have to push onto these islands. And if push comes to shove, we can get from Saaremaa to Leningrad on a boat. So that's that. So I'm pretty happy with that. Western Pocket is in a bit direr of shape. We've got some guys that are just doggedly holding the line down here. They'll continue to do that. I'm going to go over to the combat view again, so we see where a lot of these units have been cleaned up. They've just been spending too much time out of supply and are just isolated. So the Germans are cleaning this up and will be able to repair their rail network. So we largely left these forces where they were. Anyone who's in level 2 entrenchments is just going to stay and just make the Germans move them. We're also leaving our troops in the pocket around Minsk. We'll just defend Minsk as long as we can. We may get pushed off of it next turn, and we'll defend in these rough terrain hexes where we've started to entrench. Not high hopes for this. We'll also face high casualty numbers as this begins to reduce, but that's just how it is. It's tantalizingly close to our own forces, but we cannot even move these German regiments off with what we have here. We'll be pulling these guys further back, so attempting a breakout that way doesn't make any sense. Only troop we ended up moving was this tank unit is just going to continue to cause havoc in the German rear. They've just got these security units that are going to be able to hopefully won't be able to really deal with it effectively, and so just continuing to be a distraction and to hurt their supply. Moving on, we are going to go south to north. They just bypassed this, but that's okay. Yeah, you can not have that railroad. Going south to north, they have undermined the Dnieper line. What I'll do is I'll see if we actually have enough combat value, because we might have enough tanks that it's worth it to try to do an attack on this and push it back across the Dnieper. That would be great. We do have 7 combat value here that's pretty readily available, and then reestablish the line. Now they will end up pushing us off it, even if that succeeds, which it may not. And if it doesn't, it'll cost us. But even if it succeeds, they'll probably end up pushing us off this line next turn. But making them fight over it an additional turn is just one more turn to bring up reinforcement. Does HP Munchkincraft remember how to launch a deliberate attack? Let's see. Not a great result. So we wasted a lot in our deliberate attack. We did hurt them pretty badly there. We'll check that. So we did, well, I say hurt them pretty badly, but I thought our losses were higher. But we did beat that unit up a little bit, so that'll hurt them a little bit. But they did hold. Our counterattack is a failure, so we're going to have to just defend. And I do think we're going to continue to defend along the Dniester, not Dnieper, the Dniester line for one more turn, and hope it works. And I'll see you when we move those units. I set up a defensive line about as best I could on the southern front. Again, this is very disappointing that we can't push them back across the Dniester, but again, expected Soviets early war. We've got our secondary line barely forming. We may have to make some really bad defenses in this area to make it work, but I think it's fine. The other main thing we did down here was bring in the 28th Army to take some of that command load off of the 9th Army, so it shouldn't be so overloaded now. This front is fairly orderly, although it is, I wouldn't say sorted, it's at risk if they push us. We have one good line and a couple of like bad ones. If they push us off the front, we're going to be in trouble and we might be in difficulties. We also don't have a lot of good reserves moving up. We may have to pay closer attention to that. We've got guys fortifying Nikolaev, but I don't have anyone spare to fortify like Kherson or Kivry Rog back here. Is that how you pronounce that? Not sure, but that's a little bit in the future. So we'll move on from there to our Southwestern Front. And in the Southwestern Front, I think that it has been long enough for us to be able to disband these guys. Like, realistically, we had enough time to get them out of the pocket. That's, we're not cheesing it, we're not doing anything like that. Maybe we should have made them fight over that city, but I don't think these units are very strong. So we're just going to disband them right now, and we're going to generally move out of the last of Galicia and Bukovina into mainline Podolodia. I don't know if you can see, but we've got this nice little block of hills that we're going to keep our mountain divisions in to form part of the line, and then we are going to just be moving back into a more central defensive position. It is on the plains. We do have a little bit of background fortifications started, so we may want to move into those. But it is on good attacking terrain, so the Germans, having broken through our Tarnopol line, will have a pretty easy job. But we'll try to fix that up a little bit, get it into a little bit decent shape, and we may have to move some units around. Now, up in this Volhynia region, we're going to be mainly just pulling back. This area is no longer tenable. We may still leave some units along the line in here, but we're going to get like weak units like this. We're definitely going to get out of here. And then these strong tank units also, they're would just be stopping the enemy from walking through the swamp. So we're going to get them out of here behind this Gorin, looks like, river, and into a place where they won't be cut off if the enemy outflanks. Now, up in the Pripyat, I think I am going to continue keeping my troops on the line. Some of these guys might move even north into the Pripyat, and we'll actually try to make a stand within the Pripyat marshes itself. This is kind of getting onto the border of the Western Front, but I think the Western Front guys will keep moving north, and we'll deal with them later. Right now, I think we just need to get the Southwestern Front sorted, and when we get to the reinforcement phase, we may have to move more guys in. That's becoming a bit of a... I'm saying that about a lot of fronts, so we'll see who it ends up happening at the very end. So here's the post-movement Southwestern Front, what it generally looks like. We've pulled out of this forming pocket, though we may have to pull back further, but I really do want to keep these hills as a defensive barrier if we can. I think we'll do pretty good here. Here I'm not so sure of. Their offense at Tarnopol was pretty powerful, and they will probably keep pushing us back, so we'll see where that ends up. We've pretty much evacuated this area of rough terrain in front of Rovno, unfortunately, but the Germans will still have to march through it in our half-dug defenses, which may slow them down a little bit. We're starting to actually see the beginnings of a line in the Pripyat that will enable us to actually defend there, which will be excellent because it's great defensive terrain for infantry. But if we want to actually do it, we will have to pull in more reinforcements. So we'll see. Once we get to our reinforcement phase, we will see if we actually have the men for that. Otherwise, we'll just have to keep using the rough terrain of the Pripyat as a shield, and our forces will probably just have to retreat further. But we do have these units that are pretty much in the swamp. We do have some spare rifle corps without units. We should put units onto them, but I'm going to let it sit for a while because this is still such a fluid front. Moving on to the Western Front. This is a mess. We'll start with the Pripyat units. They're just going to have to keep pulling back. We might be able to start thinking about manning this line here. This forming pocket really needs to be evacuated. We'll see how many of our guys we can get out of here. This unit is rough because it can only get out one, so we'll have to maybe leave a breadcrumb trail back. But I think we will be able to put up a line in the Pripyat. We'll be pushed off of it, but that's okay. In this area where they really pushed us, we are going to keep on keeping on with our line, and we're going to keep on trying to just make this Dnieper line happen. We're going to still probably keep these military district units attached to their military district instead of attaching them to the Western Front, but we'll see about that. Now, fortunately, they did not, even though this was not good. Let's see the real battle. Yeah, that wasn't good. They routed us. Even though that happened, this line near the Pruitt or Druitt stayed, so we're going to keep reinforcing it and then move up reinforcements behind or move back units that are depleted to start building up the line along the Dnieper. We want to keep our tanks out of these swamp hexes, but they should be great for infantry in a swamp behind a river. Seems like a good place to defend. We are also going to keep on fortifying the Smolensk land bridge around this area. We have units we've brought in via train, so we'll see how that goes. And this, oh Lord, this area, okay, we can get these guys out. We're going to probably pull these back to the hills, though we'll probably end up shifting infantry onto the hills and let the armor keep pulling back. We're going to keep on letting these two strong units fortify Smolensk. It's a lot of combat power that I'm putting towards Smolensk itself, which is not great, but it is something that I want to actually keep hold of, especially as we've lost the northern part of our line on Pskov. Zooming out a bit, we do have reinforcements come in that we will be moving towards this Dnieper line, so that's where those reinforcements in the center will go, and we will probably go ahead and move some of these Moscow reinforcements down, though again I will be acting a little bit historically, and these units that say Moscow militia I am probably just going to keep in the Moscow area and start fortifying it up. That's premature. They are nowhere near Moscow right now, but in history that's what they were raised for, and that's what we're going to do with them, and we're going to make sure that the Germans cannot get to Moscow. All these other units strung out on the road, they're going to be moved up. So I'll see you when that's done, and we may end up keeping some of them in Moscow military district hands rather than putting them on the Western Front, but I'd like to start soon fixing this to a more permanent basis. So what we've done is we've made this northern section basically the responsibility of these units attached to the Moscow military district. They'll be defending the northern side of the Smolensk land bridge, and a little further north than that take a little bit of pressure off the NorthWestern Front, though the NorthWestern Front looking pretty tiny, so we may end up shifting those fronts soon. We've left all the troops in the military districts under the command of those military districts. I think that's fine for now. We set up our double line here. It's not a good one, but it is there. I really fear that they're going to just keep pocketing this strong division and we're going to lose another good division, but that may end up happening. We're just going to keep on trying to get it out, keep on trying to get these troops out, set up maybe a line in the Pripyat itself. This will be fairly hard for the Germans. Well, not really hard in terms of combat, but they'll have to walk up through difficult terrain and then waste more time on attacks, so that's fairly good for us. Our terribly depleted armored units are finally making it out. These are a little more than unit containers at this point, but this guy's got 77 tanks, so that's pretty good. But they should be able to finally get out of the Pripyat and start reconstituting themselves and refitting behind it. We have a few frontline refits here, but mostly they are in the second line refitting. So we'll see what the German offensive machine can do in this area. We still do have the Dnieper line. We still have the Smolensk land bridge, so this area was surprisingly, given how it was last turn, not terrible this turn. I'm going to hold off. We moved a few reinforcements up, but I'm going to hold off on bringing in reinforcements from Moscow until the very end, because this is in a pretty good shape. So if we have enough, I would love to move them into the SouthWestern Front's area of operations and patch up this Dnieper line so we no longer have a gap. And not Dnieper line, this is the Pripyat line. Patch up the Pripyat line so we no longer have a gap. And that would be spectacular. The more of these German follow-up units that just have to sit around marching through the swamp, the better. The Germans started this offensive pretty late, and so it's not that long until the mud comes and bails out our defensives. In case you didn't know, that before there is general winter, there's general mud. There's a huge rainy autumn area where everything turns muddy and shitty, and it's terrible for military operations. So stopping the Germans earlier than the mud season will put an end to their offensive plans in the mud season, and then it'll be winter, and hopefully we can regain the initiative in the winter. But we have a long time before then. It is still July the 6th, so they have basically 2 months to have good summer offensive operations before maybe late September it'll start getting muddy. In the NorthWestern Front, it's looking pretty beat-ass. We've all these temporary units are gone, and we've lost a lot. So we're going to have to put reinforcements in. We're going to take the units we already have and continue defending this defensible rough terrain. Keep making the Germans push us out of it. But our units are going to get chewed up in that effort, and so we'll need more. So I just kept holding onto the defensive line with the NorthWestern Front, and because the NorthWestern Front is was so low on units, I just transferred that Moscow military district area over to its control. So it is now defending the northern end of the southern land of the Smolensk land bridge to the Velhyaluki area. I did have 2 strong reinforcement divisions that came in by train to stop this northward, northeastern ward push, and we are going to continue holding the current line in the forest. However, this is a little deceptive, as a lot of these units are weak or refitting, which is bad for the front line. So I think we're really going to have to bring in some units by train, because we don't want to give up all this rough terrain for free. Granted, this rough terrain and the Kolin area is also suitable for defenses behind it, but we want them to have to push us off this woods and rivers line, and then push us off a hill line, and then push us off another river line, and then maybe in these woods. So we'll see how far we can, how much we can stop them before they get there. I'll do that in reinforcement bringing in later. Now over here, in the Leningrad front, this is pretty dire. We will have to bring, maybe I should have covered this in the NorthWestern Front, but we will have to bring troops further out of Estonia. But the Leningrad Front's area is very dire. Our Pskov River line has been undermined, and what's worse is a lot of these are routes and surrenders. So these units that we have left are not going to be in any good defensible shape. Fortunately, we did receive a bunch of reinforcements around Leningrad, in addition to units we've evacuated. So the Leningrad militia, I think I'm actually going to be pretty proactive with. I'll leave a few around fortifying Leningrad itself. Let's get you guys off the ships. These spare armies are just evacuees that we're going to have to reassign later. But the okay. But what we're going to do is we're just going to get all these Leningrad guys moving south and trying to form some kind of defensive line against this German attack. It's not looking good. We have no second line. We do have the Narva line, which I guess counts as some kind of a second line, but it is not a... This is not a good situation for us, so we're going to have to make something out of it. We're probably going to be pushed out fairly easily of this rough terrain and then have to make one of these rivers our hold. We're also probably going to have to divert some of our reinforcements away from the Northwestern Front, or two separate areas of the Northwestern Front, to put up some kind of army in this area. The Germans do seem to be pushing heavily northeast. Some of their units are going to be distracted in the Baltics, which is great for us, but their strongest units are pushing straight towards Leningrad, and we want to make full advantage of this defensive terrain. We do not want Novgorod to fall. We do not want Leningrad to be isolated as it was historically. So that's the issue. All this is handled, this Finnish area is handled by the AI in the front system, so we are not going to worry about it unless we really start losing there, in which case that might be an issue. So we weren't able to do much here. The rain slowed us down, but it should also slow the Germans down. The Narva line is pretty well good and secure, but it may not matter if the southern Germans attack through Pskov. We have our Leningrad militia moving down. I haven't assigned them yet. What I'm going to do next turn is assign them to some of these rifle corps that were evacuated and motorized corps that were evacuated, turn those into real units again, then assign those to the Leningrad front instead of the Northwestern Front, and just make that all a little bit saner. We've left a few units in Leningrad to just start fortifying the city if worse comes to worse, but we're going to mostly do a proactive defense. This is in very dire shape. We need more troops in the north, and we need more troops in the west, because this is basically a gap in between the Leningrad and Northwestern fronts that the Germans can take advantage of. It's good terrain that we're not defending. We should be able to put up some more defenses back in the Kalinin region, but I don't want to take that chance. So past that, we're going to have to make some pretty tough choices in distributing our reinforcements from the Moscow area. So what I've done is most of these turned out to just be the Moscow militia units. So what I've done is I've assigned them and the 31st Army to the Moscow Military District. We still are going to do a fairly active defense of Moscow, so we're going to just start these guys fortifying like some lines in the outer ring that we may have to fill in later if push comes to shove, and a few of them are going to be fortifying the inner ring of the city itself if, God forbid, the Germans ever get there. So that's that. I sent most of my reinforcements up to the area between the Leningrad and Northwest fronts, so hopefully they won't get overran. I don't think the Germans actually will have the movement points to push through and make it, but they will be able to form that new line next turn, and I will also assign them to the different units next turn. I think next turn we're going to have some of our Baltic evacuees become the leadership and assign units to them, and we'll have these forces coming down south from Leningrad. form this line, so we'll sort of form a box in here if we're not faced with total disaster, and make something of that front there. Unfortunately, that means we did not really get any reinforcements into the Pripyat area. We may have to figure something out with that. These guys may have to pull south, and then we may have to pull some of these guys from the northern edges, which is fairly reinforced to a more southerly defensive position. But we'll see. The Pripyat, fortunately, it's swamp. It's hard for them to move through, so we will have a little bit of time to figure that out, but I don't want to end up in an embarrassing situation where, like, Chernigov or Kiev is threatened by German forces marching through empty ground. We did have one reinforcement unit, that is the 69th Mechanized Division. Very nice, a very strong division that we are directing south on a train. I don't know where that'll end up, but we'll put it where it's needed most. We have pretty good defenses here. We really took a beating last turn, so we'll have to just see what ends up happening. I'm happy with the Baltic evacuation. I'm unhappy with the Leningrad front. I'm feeling better about the Western Front, but worse about the Northwestern Front. I think the Southwestern Front, we got lucky for long enough that was just eventually coming, and although the Southern Front was a bit of a disappointment, I'll have to see. So let's let these robots handle our depots, maybe, and I will ship the turn over to the Germans.